On this episode, we learn about the Designing Walkable Urban Thoroughfares manual. Then we learn about the State Smart Transportation Initiative. We meet the author of Steps to a Walkable Community. Finally, we attend Walk to School Day at Drew Elementary School in Silver Spring, Maryland. Stay tuned.
We're in Long Beach, California, talking with Rock Miller, who's the ITE International President. What does ITE stand for?
Well, ITE is the Institute of Transportation Engineers. We're a member organization primarily consisting of practicing city traffic engineers, traffic engineering consultants, and persons that are interested in traffic engineering and transportation engineering.
Now, a while back, ITE and CNU, the Congress for the New Urbanism, worked together on a project. What was that all about?
That's right. We had a joint project with the CNU, the Congress of New Urbanism, to basically produce a manual called Walkable Urban Thoroughfares, a Recommended Practice. It's a document that basically encapsulates and summarizes some street design features, techniques, and possibilities that can be used cooperatively by teams of traffic engineers, transportation planners, and urban designers that are attempting to get a little bit more out of streets than just simply travel.
How'd this all get started?
Well, it really got started because traffic engineers have a long history of working with design manuals that were handed down to us from our parent transportation engineers with many pieces of paper which were entitled standards. That has sort of evolved over the years into where things that were called standards have been assumed to be the only acceptable way of doing certain things. And that started to really cause some problems in the modern efforts to try to remodel and redesign streets to meet more purposes than simple travel from one end of the street to the other. The manual provides a lot of information and insight to both planners and to engineers how we can do a better job of working with each other to design streets that meet far more needs than the simple mobility of automobiles.
And is there anything in the new publication that wasn't in all these old publications, or?
There's information in the publication that's certainly new because a lot has happened in the street design field in the last 10 to 15 years. The more important aspect of the publication is that it represents a recommended practice for the Institute of Transportation Engineers. Many of our members look to the Institute to provide our members with guidelines and instruction and information on what is an acceptable practice, what is an acceptable variation from a dictated standard practice, and how can we work to meet the needs of other street designers to provide more variety to streets, to be able to get more use out of the streets, and to get the streets to work better. As a result, it's really a pace-setting document because it's basically the first time the Institute has worked closely with these other groups to come up with a manual that does describe how you can be flexible, particularly within the urban context.
You know, and people talk about walkable communities or livable communities or walkability. How would those concepts fit in with this manual?
Well, the title of the manual is Walkable Urban Thoroughfares, so quite obviously the goal of the manual is to work to produce streets that provide more walkable environments. If you follow the guidelines of a manual like this, you're going to have a street that will cause people to feel comfortable walking on the street. They'll feel comfortable where pedestrian crossings are supposed to occur. It'll be comfortable for non-motorized transportation users of the street, particularly bicyclists. Transit users will feel better if you have to go to the bus stop on the other side of the street, things like that. So the net result is it's to better understand and better design the street so that it meets the needs of all users, not just the vehicles that travel from one end to the other.
It's still a pretty new publication. How's it being put to use? How can it be put to use?
It's a relatively new publication. A number of local communities have started with this document and customized it and tailored it to become that community's street design guide. There's some overhead and some cost to that. Other communities have simply looked at this document and said, I think that would be a fine document to be our street design guide, and simply adopted this document itself. A couple of agencies that we know have recently done that is the State of Texas Transportation Department in El Paso, Texas. Basically, it's got a label pasted over it that says El Paso Street Design Guides.
So it's already being put to practical use.
Absolutely being put to practical use, plus as other communities initiate attempts and efforts to do customized manuals, they quite often start with this manual in terms of being the framework of how their documents are designed, the sequence of chapters, the approach the document takes to how you would handle, say, a sidewalk versus how you would handle a travel lane of a street or a median. So basically, if you are doing your own manual, but you have a good, thorough, comprehensive reference like this, you can be assured that your own manual will be every bit as thorough as this guide is.
And are these concepts and publications like this going to be showing up in engineering education?
In fact, our document is actually being used as a textbook in some college campuses as we speak, and the document comes along with faculty instructor notes if you should want to use it that way. I can't tell you the number of colleges that are using it, but we know that number one source of people that have obtained copies of the documents have been for the education and instructional fields.
And you say there are instructor notes for it so that you make it easy for
Basically, it gives suggestions and ideas to a faculty instructor on how they could use the manual to supplement other materials in teaching a transportation or a transportation urban design course.
So recommended practice in general. Institute of Transportation Engineers, how do recommended practices fit in with your overall mission?
Well, a recommended practice is a pretty substantial document from the perspective of our institute. It basically means it starts with a document that may present a bunch of ideas, concepts, and potential applications. They are then subject to a very substantial review process by experts that have experience with that application, experience in the field, and generally well-groomed in some of the principles of traffic safety that we're very worried about. The document goes through a fairly thorough editorial and review process, which ultimately results in being essentially balloted by a review committee of experts and well-respected members of the Institute. The fact that it's gone through that level of vetting, analysis, and thorough evaluation basically gives our members the assurance that when it does become a recommended practice, they can trust that the best minds in the transportation profession have reviewed the document and can subscribe to its results. It's very significant. We do not have that many recommended practices, and we probably put out only one every year or two. So it's a very substantial and a very significant document to have achieved that status.
We're talking with Robbie Weber with the state's Smart Transportation Initiative. What is the initiative?
We are a think and do tank which is based at the University of Wisconsin. We work with 19 heads of state DOTs, and these are people who are interested in working on issues that they often share. And in many cases, they want to change various things about the way transportation policy, how to select projects, how to fund projects, and things like that. So it's a wonderful opportunity for them to have a peer-to-peer relationship. We get them together twice a year for a meeting, completely off the record, so they can be open and have a discussion. And we also do technical assistance with our partner states when they ask us to work on a project. And we also work as a clearinghouse for transportation information for the larger community. We have a newsletter, an e-newsletter, which comes out every 2 weeks. We have webinars once a month, and we also have a website with lots of resources that would be of interest to anyone interested in any kind of transportation topic.
What are some of the challenges states are facing right now that they might want to talk to each other about finding solutions?
Well, one of the biggest ones, of course, is money. The federal government, the gas tax, money that comes to the states is, in many cases, sort of hopelessly locked by partisan politics. And states are realizing they're sort of on their own. They have an aging infrastructure. They need to fix it. In many cases, people still want bigger infrastructure, and it's not possible. It's just not possible in all sorts of different ways, but financially. And in many cases, these DOT secretaries realize that they need to change the mix of transportation, that we're moving into a different era, and they're trying to figure out how to do that. But they're also trying to figure out how to fund all of it. Nobody wants to raise the gas tax. There's resistance to a mileage-based user fee, otherwise known as a vehicle miles traveled tax. Tolls are not popular. Registration and licensing fees are not popular, but they have to somehow get the money for their system.
So everyone wants a good transportation system. Nobody wants to pay for it.
That's right. And of course, most of us in the field know that a lot of transportation is done on local roads, sidewalks, bike lanes, transit, and none of it pays for itself, but somehow the public thinks that the roads are paid for by the gas tax, and they're not. Actually, a fairly small percentage of the roads are paid for by the gas tax, but they seem to think that it's all covered by what they pay.
You know, you have a lot of other things floating around out there. Everything, climate change being one that nobody seems to want to talk about right now, but it's coming. Transportation is a major part of that. What are people talking about there?
Well, a lot of the secretaries and directors, we call them the CEOs because they have different titles in different states, they do want to talk about it. They're either getting pressure from above or below, from the grassroots, or sometimes from their governors and legislatures to deal with both sustainability issues and climate change. Some states are starting to put mandates and performance measures as far as sustainability and carbon or other climate issues onto transportation projects or all infrastructure projects, and so they are having to consider it. A lot of times the public, it's very controversial, but I think a lot of people at the upper level know it's coming, and they're trying to find a way to move into a system where they can consider that as part of their project selection.
And they're actually meeting later this week. What's on the agenda this time around?
We do get the CEOs together twice a year so they can talk to each other peer to peer, and we usually have one topic or maybe two. This time we are doing a little bit on the new federal budget, but the main topic is going to be about cities. Some larger cities are finding that they want to do innovative infrastructure such as green lanes, separated bike lanes, bicycle-specific signals, and all sorts of good pedestrian projects. But some of these infrastructure projects are not actually in the AASHTO manual, and so they're having trouble getting them approved, or they're having to really jump through hoops to get them approved. So we're trying to get the state DOTs to be a little more flexible when the cities want to do something really good, to say yes, so that they're not being blocked, and that the funding is available, and they can do things that will move into the 21st century and beyond and make it a transportation system that everybody can use. Another topic that sometimes comes up is that in some communities the main street, or one of the main streets in a large city, is a state highway. So often they will need the approval of the state DOT to make changes, and that's another place where they're having trouble sometimes getting to yes.
And state DOTs, historically, a lot of them have been used to dealing with rural roads, and sometimes they forget that the state highway turns into Main Street when it goes through town. What's been happening with state DOTs dealing with urban issues as well as the classical rural issues?
Well, of course it varies. We have some really forward-thinking CEOs. That's why they're working with us. They know that cities are important, but sometimes the heads of the DOTs don't necessarily control some of the projects because they're all done at the district level. So that's another topic that sometimes they talk about, is how to get these policies implemented statewide so that communities can do what they want to do, whether it's road diets or innovative pedestrian and bike facilities, or narrowing roads, narrowing lanes. And cities are complicated. They're messy. They're not just a big open space where you can pretty much build anything you want. So it's difficult, and it's hard for them sometimes to come down to the community level and think about what needs to be done in those cities. And look at the needs of that specific area of the community, even within the city.
How do you see your role going into the future in perhaps changing the role of state DOTs?
Well, I think state DOTs is sort of where the action is as far as a lot of the decisions that are going to be made in the future, because a lot of people see that the federal government is both the federal legislators seem to want to give both funding decisions and design decisions to the states. Some communities have their own transportation departments, but many don't. So that in many cases, the state DOTs are going to be setting the goals, the policies, the design priorities for communities around the country. So it's very important that we get these DOT heads and their staff to start working on innovative projects that can move us into the future and have a multimodal and more people-based transportation system.
We're talking with Laura McNeil with Sam Schwartz Engineering. What is Sam Schwartz Engineering?
It's a transportation engineering consulting firm. We have 8 offices around the country and over 90 employees.
Recently you've been working on a big project. What is it?
It's called Steps to a Walkable Community, a guide for citizens, planners, and engineers, and it's a collection of multidisciplinary tactics to help communities create more walkable environments for themselves.
How did this project get started?
Well, it was actually the genesis of Sam Schwartz himself. He hired me to write the book about pedestrian engineering, which turned into a discussion about what would be most helpful to really make pedestrian environments and walkable communities a reality. And any discussion about walkable communities needs to include land use and advocacy and encouragement and design engineering all in the same mix. So together we started working on this project, and then we realized that America Walks, a national pedestrian advocacy organization, was looking to do something similar. So we joined forces, and Sam Schwartz Engineering, me as principal author, did the bulk of the research and the writing of the tactics, and America Walks is doing a bulk of the distribution of the information, the webinars, the workshops, and the advocacy outreach components.
You mentioned the distribution of the information. This is a book that people can purchase, but it's also available electronically for free.
Yeah. Well, the idea is that we're trying to make this as accessible as possible. We really want to encourage communities to know what their options are, how to work on it together, and everyone likes a hard copy, but a hard copy costs money, whereas a PDF is something that people can download and share and use for free. And to give people that option, it's something that is not only going to be a PDF and a hard copy for the printing cost of $40, but it will also be an online resource where all these different tactics that we've researched and distilled into discrete guidance, and I can talk about that in a minute. But all of these different tactics are going to be on a website that people can go on free, look at, explore, and then create customized strategies that suit their community and their needs and their challenges and strengths. And that's something that's going online in October at walksteps.org, walksteps.org. But I also wanted to talk about what are these tactics and how are they presented. There are about 76 or more than 76 tactics, and they're grouped by a discipline. I mentioned land use, I mentioned design engineering, but there's also advocacy and education and encouragement and enforcement. And all of these tactics are they're non-mandatory. These are things that we're not including the standard things. For example, an easy question is, why don't we include the pedestrian countdown signals, which is a great technique that we really support in creating walkable communities? It's because the most recent federal guidelines, a manual for uniform traffic control devices, that's the mandated version of pedestrian signals, if you have to replace or create new ones. So that's done. That work is done. Communities don't need to look for that tactic in this book. They want to see what a raised crosswalk might do for their community, or a leading pedestrian interval, which is a signal that allows pedestrians to walk across, to get the green light essentially, like the white man, to cross the street before the direction in the same, or the cars in the same direction. So pedestrians can get onto the street and be more visible before cars that are turning right can get in the way and prevent them from doing that. So it's these kinds of treatments that are not being adopted uniformly or standard in federal practice that will be helpful for readers to see where it's in place, what's working, why it's working, and how they can adopt that for themselves. So all of these guides are described in a standard format. It's a definition, it's benefits of that tactic, considerations of that tactic, where it's appropriate, and what guidance for how to implement that tactic, as well as professional consensus. Is there, let's say, guidance on that in that manual for uniform traffic control devices? Does the federal government consider this a proven safety countermeasure that they're actively encouraging and providing funding for? Is this something that studies can help support when you have a skeptical politician or engineer resistant to this idea? And then it's followed by examples of where this tactic is already in place. And lastly, in most tactics have a case study where a little bit more information about the context and the means of implementation and the results of that implementation are outlined for the reader to get a better familiarity of what that might look like in action in their community.
So who do you see using this information?
I see this as something that walking advocates can use, planners can use, engineers can use, and politicians can use. It's basically trying to bring all the different people that have to be part of a walking coalition and a movement to actually create real meaningful walkability change. Bringing them together to see, oh yes, this component, I know this component. I don't know this one, but I can see how it can work in concert. Or I'm an engineer, but I didn't think about using, analyzing traffic by person in a car rather than just by the numbers of cars. That changes the way that I consider priorities and what might seem feasible in a certain traffic situation. And then this book is also something that a planner can say, I bet that engineer hasn't thought about that. Let me show him this tactic and talk about how this might apply to making something that seemed to be previously unfeasible possible, maybe. Or, maybe this city planner hasn't thought about this tactic that's being used in Vancouver. Maybe I can bring that up with that planner and start this discussion about what's possible and what we can try and advocate for here in our community.
And you said America Walks is going to be kind of picking up the ball and running with it now. You mentioned very quickly some of the things they're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Could you go into those in a little more depth?
Sure. Well, this afternoon, actually, America Walks is organizing the pilot workshop using these tactics as a way of fostering discussion with a collection of local community groups in Long Beach to discuss what walking needs and walkability needs they have, what their strengths are, where these tactics might fit in, how they can create a plan of action to move forward with to improve conditions that concern them on the ground now. So that's going to be a half-day workshop, and they are going to be rolling this half-day workshop out across the country, and communities that want to hear more about that or ask for a workshop to take place in their community just have to reach out to americawalks.org to set that up and learn what those options are. There are also going to be webinars, online presentations of what tactics these are, how they might be applied to communities, and to learn more about this resource on a local basis, tailored to their concerns and their needs, and frankly, their budgets.
And people on the online version, the PDF there, is that packed full of links for more information?
Actually, it's very good. Thank you for asking that. The PDF is got extra capabilities. It's an interactive PDF, and things that are underlined in it, like the examples, like case studies, like references, specific websites that can be used for guidance. All of these things are linked so that a reader of the PDF can just click on that link to find out more information, go directly to the source where that information was found, to find out more details and to contact the people that say in Kansas City that came up with the walkability plan that we include as a case study or as an example of good practice.
We're in Silver Spring, Maryland, talking with Jarina Zuber. What school are we standing in front of?
Dr. Charles R. Drew Elementary School.
And what happened here this morning?
We had a wonderful Walk to School Day event.
What happens on Walk to School Day?
On Walk to School Day, we talk with the students about healthy choices, walking to school, and pedestrian safety, and we have all of our students, including our bus riders, walk to school.
How do you do that? How do you get the bus riders to walk to school?
We drop them off at a local community center, and our staff is so wonderful. They meet us all there, and we walk as a whole group. And we ask that parents who normally drop their students off at school to drop them off at the community center as well, so we can all walk together.
So everyone gets a chance to participate then?
Yes, even if it's only just walking from in our neighborhood.
What's involved in organizing something like this?
Coordinating with a lot of different people. We work with our bus transportation staff to make sure that the bus riders can participate, training our staff on where they need to go, and also working with our students so that they know what to expect the morning of.
Working with students, that also means working with parents. How do you let parents know what's going to be going on?
We tell them a lot of different ways. We started our back to school night at the beginning of the year to let them know about our event. We send flyers home, we put stickers on our students, we have posters up in the front of our school, and then we tell them when they come and drop them off the day before what to expect.
So this isn't something you can start planning, a week before the event?
No, you need quite some time. We started planning actually at the end of last school year.
How many years have you been doing Walk to School Day here?
This is our second year for having a large event like this.
What'd you learn last year that you were able to make this year better?
Communication. We learned about letting parents know a little bit earlier than we did last year, and also communicating with the students. Last year, some of them were a little surprised when we started walking, so we were sure that everyone knew what to expect this year.
Now, this is just one day a year. How does this benefit the students the rest of the year?
Well, we hope that they enjoyed it so much walking with their friends in the neighborhood that they'll want to continue to walk. We do have some students who live in our neighborhood who are car riders, and we hope after this they see who else they can walk with, and then they'll walk as a group together.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.